this whole grooming gang phenomenon is what contained primarily to Muslim men, and it really only started when you started seeing mass migration waves, saying, I've read the Quran, I've seen what's in there, even if you don't think that my interpretation of the Quran is correct, I would point you to, I don't know, what countries have the most issues when it comes to child brides and of young girls and children is obviously a systemic cultural problem.
I don't know what planet you're living on or what you're smoking.
IslamNet is raising funds to establish a masjid and community center in Norway, and they urgently need your support. This donation will be a Sadaqah Jariya for you, because every person that comes a step closer to Allah through your donation, you will inshallah be reaping the reward. Click the link and donate what you can. Hey guys, let's get straight into the video inshallah. So I came across this video on Piers Morgan's show inshallah, as you can see, and I couldn't help but come across an absolute bigot of a woman who was on there from America, who has no idea about what goes in the UK, has no idea about who Tommy Robinson is, what he stands for, what kind of Islamophobe he is, and not only that, he's inspired many terrorists. One of those, Darren Osborne, who tried to run over innocent Muslims. So we're going to watch this video inshallah and react to ourselves. And in this video there is a very young man, I would say, who is intelligent, who has a degree in philosophy when it comes to religion. So if there's anyone that could maybe talk about the Quran to a specific degree, it's this man. So let's watch the video for ourselves and make some conclusions, because he absolutely annihilated her. Absolutely annihilated her. And let's watch this inshallah for ourselves and let's see what we can take from it inshallah. Enjoy it.
Sure, well, I don't really think that tolerance should be the paramount virtue if the disparate cultures that you're importing into said country are cultures that, frankly, I think are conducive to gang raping of young girls. If you read the Quran, I mean, young women, pedophilia isn't something that's totally out of the blue. It's codified in that text, and I think why it resonates.
Interesting. Pedophilia, raping little girls are codified in the Quranic text. Interesting, both statements. Which part of the Quran? I'm very curious now. Very curious now. Yes, you flipping intellectual midget. You know, they talk about blondes being a bit, you know, I'm not generalizing for all of them, but she definitely fits in that category. Can you please tell me, please, anybody, forget her, which Quranic text, which codified Quranic text, where in the Quran does it say that we as Muslim men, I wake up and I go, yep, let me read my Quran verse today that says, yep, I can rape little girls, yep. Can you show me where? Because it's very interesting, because I'm not allowed to touch a woman's hand. You know, when I was in the Brogan's Getting There podcast, amazing podcast, lovely lady, and I was there, and you know, I even told her before I got there that I cannot shake her hand out of respect. You know, I went there with my wife as well, lovely lady, she gave us a gift, and we bought some gifts as well. I couldn't shake her hand. Why can I not shake her hand? I don't understand. I cannot shake her hand, but I can rape little girls. It makes perfect sense. Let's carry on. It makes perfect sense.
Resonates so strongly in America, and I know your analysis of it was maybe a little bit reductive, but it's because that's the lived experience of a lot of Americans when it comes to the issue of immigration. And I think the hypocrisy where you see elites pushing multiculturalism, pushing open borders, mass migration, when they've never really made the case as to why the average American benefits from it or needs to have it. They just say diversity is our strength, and that's where they end the sentence. And I think to that point, right, when you read the limited inquiries that they've had into the whole grooming gang escapades, what do they always say? Oh, well, the police didn't go into it because they didn't want to start race riots or race wars. I'm sorry, these are the same elites who have absolutely no qualms or no issue with bringing up, you know, racialized incidents if it's a white person being the aggressor.
I mean, that I agree with. I mean, if this is true, the politicians or the police or people who should be taking care of these girls were more concerned that, oh, it's going to be seen as race. Who cares a damn? Who cares, bro? Who cares? You should be dealing with the crime itself. The repercussions of, oh, they're going to blame a certain group, etc. That's going to happen regardless. These people are going to do it regardless. The far right will do it regardless. So it should have not come at the cost of those girls being left so vulnerable that were used by these criminals who, under the Sharia, would have been executed. Why? Because it's a capital punishment adultery. Most of these men were married, if I'm not mistaken. They would get the capital punishment, or they'd be whipped in public. It'll be severe. Oh, let me guess. You love the Sharia law now. Oh yes, you do. I'm sure you do. So I agree fully. In this specific point with this flipping intellectual midget, yes, this bimbo, in no way, shape or form, a person's race or whatever it is for that matter should be a stopping factor, a factor that you do not, like, you stop the inquiry because it might be. Who cares, man? Who cares? The crime should be dealt with. The repercussions of, okay, there's going to be a race riot, whatever, etc. Those are something that we can deal with after. But you cannot stop a crime because of that. So look, there is truth, I have to stand with it.
Person being the aggressor against a minority, just like what happened in the case of George Floyd. So it's very selective, and I think it confirms what a lot of people think here, certainly in the United States, with the agenda of certainly mass illegal, and I think we've also learned this week, legal immigration, that there is some level of replacement, I think, of American culture going on here, and they do it by importing cultures that have nothing in common with the West. And our leaders will say that assimilation is racist, it's neo-colonial, it's not appropriate to say that cultures that have different different values and standards than us need to adopt.
Okay, but isn't it undeniably true that I think the vast majority of domestic terrorism in the United States this century has been perpetrated by white people?
Boom!
Well, that's only because they've reworked the definition of domestic terrorism to include events like January 6th and people who are affiliated.
Oh, reworded it, like using the word grooming for specific people, you know. It's sexual exploitation, it's rape. You know, you can't give a specific term. It's done by all kinds of people.
We're affiliated with MAGA, so I would certainly say that their classification of what constitutes domestic terrorism is sort of cherry-picked, especially when they prosecuted and persecuted every single Jan 6er on an individual basis. But I mean, the Biden regime just 3 weeks ago puts out a whole white paper, a new strategy to counter Islamophobia and anti-Muslim hate. I don't really think that that's the most pressing issue going on in the United States of America right now. And I think there's two compounding issues, which is what Dr. Jordan Peterson was getting into. One is the issue of mass migration at an unprecedented number in terms of the people who are coming in. Traditionally, America would sort of have on and off periods. Now you're seeing.
Well, I would throw back at you this argument, which is that I got into a lot of hot water in America many years ago over calling for gun control after the Sandy Hook mass shooting, for example. The vast majority of mass shootings in America are by disturbed young white men. Should we use that as a reason to take dramatic action against all young white men? I mean,
Boom! Should we talk about their religion? Should we say they're Christian because it's a predominantly Christian country? Why are you not calling it a Christian mass shooting problem? Why don't you bring their religion into it or where they're from? Of course you wouldn't, you hypocrite. That's the point that we're making. What have these men got to do with Islam? Why are they being called Muslim? What's it got to do with their religion? You morons. That's our point.
I mean, that's the analogy I would use. Or do you accept that actually?
I don't think.
Well, my point is, do you accept that they're outliers to the norm, that they are extremists? These kids committing the mass shootings.
Well, when 1 in 73 Pakistani men in that one town are engaged, I don't really even think that they're an anomaly or on the extremities. That is the mainstream culture, and it's certainly the mainstream culture when you're at an institutional level for police officers who are covering it up.
To be clear, they were all almost exclusively members of the British Pakistani Muslim community. So that is a small number of the general Muslim population. Very small, actually. And so it's not pertinent to say it was a Muslim cultural problem, this scandal. It was a cultural problem amongst British Pakistani men, exclusively.
I don't necessarily know if that framing is correct. I
It is
think there's
correct.
a racial element to it.
It is
Well,
correct.
I think if you want to have the uncomfortable conversation about Islam, it is sort of conducive to pedophilia. I mean, I don't necessarily think that you can reduce it to the idea that, oh, well, just because they happen to be, Pakistani,
What planet
British
are you living
men.
on?
Ask her again about the white school shooters.
Where
She
I
didn't
read
answer
the Quran.
that question.
Oh yeah, she definitely did answer the white mass shooters question, yeah. The way they make it seem is as if, look, I would take their arguments valid if they looked cross-culturally. In Europe, Western world, Islamic world, and the perpetrators are only Muslim. When it comes to sexual violence and rape and paedophilia, it is just Muslims and Asians. Then you can say, yeah. And that is so far from truth. So how could you dare? Now here is where Jack Symes absolutely annihilates her. Asks her, what kind of weed are you smoking? Because, it's doing something to your brain.
It's nice to have a conspiracy theorist on the line. It's always good fun. I hate to pull rank at you and sound like a twat, but
Not a
both of my
conspiracy
PhDs are
theory,
in
it's
philosophy
called
of
the
religion,
Quran.
and I think I'm slightly more qualified to speak about the Quran than you are, and to suggest even for a moment that that document allows for, what it does is condemn non-consensual marriage and non-consensual sexual contact.
Well, I'd look up the rates of child brides then, and I'd see what countries are most
Look at the rates of child bride. There were 250,000 girls in the United States of Israel, America, that were brides. They were married off age of 14, 13, 12. 250,000 girls were married underage. Pedophilia in your country, darling. Yeah, darling.
The US isn't multiculturalism. It's a multi-billionaire running the biggest social media planet, one of the biggest in the world, which has turned into an echo chamber of your ridiculous ideology. And the fact that you're telling us all and telling the British public, who we're proudly multicultural, as someone that was brought up in multicultural working class Birmingham, I can tell you for sure that there's you won't find a Muslim there who's read the Quran and went, oh, you know what, I didn't rule out sexual violence, so I might just crack on with that. I don't know what planet you're living on or what you're smoking, but I'd suggest that you do a course in religious studies before you start chatting
Well, thank
She's definitely smoking something. Yeah, it's probably crystal meth or something, because you can clearly see she has never read the Quran. For you to make that statement, it's as good as like when Tommy Robbins used to come and say, yeah, in the Quran it says kill the disbelievers. Shut the flipping hell up, man. What the hell are you talking? There's no such thing. That's why I confronted him and asked him 20 times. He couldn't answer. So you can see clearly.
Well, thank you for the ad hominem attacks. I'm sure that means you have a really strong argument, but I think the young working class girls who probably grew up in the same areas that you did would beg to differ. I don't understand what you're saying. I've read the Quran. I've seen what's in there. Even if you don't think that my interpretation of the Quran is correct, I would point you to, I don't know, what country.
Okay, please tell me which girls of those who were groomed said that these perpetrators were doing what they were doing because of Islam. Who? I want to know. And if they have, where have they substantiated that from? How? Can you please, it's an open challenge. Look, I'm challenging anybody, anywhere. I will travel to you. Anyone from the far right, please bring me evidence that the Quran condones this. Please, I just want to know. Islam, the whole entire Islamic tradition. Please tell me. Where?
What countries have the most issues when it comes to child brides and raping of young girls and children is obviously a systemic cultural problem with Islam. It's not a problem that is
which is an absolute lie. What are you talking about? Where does it say that? Not only that, there were 4 cases, one in Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Indonesia, and another one, where there was capital punishment, meaning death. Yes, not snapping the hand like you do with the groomers. These groomers, in Islamic Sharia, they'll be gone, mate, bye-bye from society. We don't deal with it like that. Hey, go inside prison, have for a free meal, 3 set course meals, PlayStation. Nah, mate. We deal with it once and for all. Nicely, trust me. So it's absolute nonsense, because in these 4 cases that I mentioned to you, they all got capital punishment. That's how Islam deals with it. Not because the perpetrator was a Muslim woman, regardless.
Or unique to the West. And I don't know, last time I checked, this whole grooming gang phenomenon is what contained primarily to Muslim men, and it really only started when you started seeing mass migration waves.
I just think this is so dangerous. This is so dangerous what you're saying. I mean, so in the United Kingdom, 1 in 3 school children.
I think it's dangerous to be importing men from cultures who are willing to rape young women.
So 1 in 3 school children are sexually harassed on the way to school when they're in their school uniform. That is not done by, to use your language, by just Muslim men in the United Kingdom. That is done by all men. That is an institutional misogyny problem. And I think we're doing the victims of sexual harassment, sexual assault and rape a disservice by continuously just talking about Muslims as a monolith, as if they're the only perpetrators of sexual assault. It's an incredibly dangerous thing to say.
And that's exactly our point.
I think all sexual assault and rape is bad. That doesn't mean...
That's exactly our point. Most of the perpetrators are 82% white men. Yes? And they're overly represented. Yes? 6% more. Okay? So the point is that I just fail to understand what is your point? I don't understand. Do you care about the victims, or are you more focused on the perpetrator? You sickos.
Does it mean that we should continue to
that's a good baseline to start with.
To engage in it.
But it's interesting that you're only concerned with Muslims. Again, you know, the real issue here, fundamentally, in the UK and the US, is less than 1% of acts of sexual violence being prosecuted. That's the big issue here. It's one of sexual violence.
I actually take issue with that.
I'm concerned when it's...
I mean, that's it. Look, guys, I don't need to say nothing more. The matter's clear. We will be dealing with this head on, inshallah, because these people are not going to hijack this and make it seem a Muslim issue when it's got nothing to do with Islam. It's their hatred towards Islam which is the problem. They hate Islam at any cost, and they will connect it to Islam in whatever way. And they cannot prove and substantiate this. It's as clear as that. They do not care about the victims. They do not care. They care about who is doing it. If it's our own, it's fine. It's fine. And if the far right genuinely care about these girls, prove it. Why don't you work with Muslims like myself who have massive platforms, Mohammed Hijab, Zishan? Why don't you join us, and we will join your cause, which we have no problem, against any kind of sexual exploitation in any way, shape or form, against any child, black, Muslim, Christian, irrelevant. If you really care. And if you don't, then that means your issue is not with the victims. That issue is with the culprits. You have an issue with who is doing the act, not the act itself. You sickos, yeah? And we're talking about sexual exploitation, and Tommy Robinson caught sleeping around with prostitutes while smoking coke. Anyways, guys, nothing else to say, inshallah. In the meantime, do not forget to check Cindy.com, alhamdulillah. Brothers and sisters, using my discount code, amazing clothing line. Check them out, brothers and sisters. I wear it on a daily basis. May Allah bless and preserve you guys. Till next time, assalamu alaikum. And I want to give a big thanks to Dr. Jack Sims. He's just a bit of description on him. He's a public philosopher and a lecturer at Durham University. Jack is best known as the producer of the Philosophy Podcast, one of UK's most popular higher education podcasts. His book includes Philosophers on Consciousness, talking about the mind 2022, Philosophers on God, talking about existence, defeating the evil God challenge in defense of God's goodness, and philosophers on how to live, talking about moral forthcoming. Guys, what an amazing guy. And that is, at the end of the day, he's being fair. That's all I have to say, brothers and sisters. Till next time, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.